On the last day of March 2024, 10 widebody jets landed at Muscat International Airport and never carried a paying passenger again. Not because of a crash, not because of a bankruptcy. The airline that owned them, Oman Air, grounded its entire Airbus A330 fleet on purpose, cutting its long-haul capacity roughly in half in a single scheduling season. Routes that had taken 15 years and billions of dollars to build, gone from the timetable overnight. Colombo, cancelled. Islamabad, cancelled. Lahore, Chittagong, cancelled. And here is the part that makes no sense at first glance. This self-inflicted amputation was not the failure, it was the rescue plan. This is not really a story about an airline, it is a story about geography and about what happens when a proud nation builds its dream 340 kilometers from someone else's empire. Because for 2 decades, Oman Air tried to win by growing, and every year of growth pushed it closer to death. The question this video answers is the one no airline executive wants to say out loud. Why was getting smaller the only strategy that the giant next door could not beat? To understand why Oman even tried, you have to go back to 2007. For decades, the small Gulf states had shared a single airline, Gulf Air, jointly owned by several governments. But one by one, the partners walked out to build their own national champions, and the results were spectacular. Dubai had Emirates, already a global phenomenon. Qatar had Qatar Airways, expanding at a furious pace. Abu Dhabi had launched Etihad and was throwing money at it like the money would expire. In 2007, Oman formally pulled out of Gulf Air too and made a decision that felt inevitable at the time. It would take Oman Air, until then a modest regional operator, and transform it into a full long-haul carrier of its own. On paper, the logic was airtight. The Gulf sits at the crossroads of the planet. Roughly a third of humanity lives within a few hours flying time. Europe to Asia, Africa to Australia, almost every great long-haul market on Earth can be conveniently connected through the Arabian Peninsula. Dubai had proven the model. Doha was proving it again. Why should Muscat, blessed with the exact same geography, sit on the sidelines? So Oman went shopping. The Airbus A330s began arriving in 2009, dressed in one of the most admired premium cabins in the sky. By 2013, the fleet had grown to 30 aircraft, with management targeting 50 by 2017. The Boeing 787 Dreamliners started landing in 2015. The airline collected award after award, named among the best in the region for staff and service, and in 2018, its chief executive announced the endgame: 70 aircraft and more than 60 new destinations by 2022. That same year, Oman opened the crown jewel, a brand new terminal at Muscat International Airport built for around 20 million passengers a year at a cost of $1.8 billion. The construction consumed more than 31,000 tons of structural steel, roughly 7 times the amount in the Eiffel Tower and nearly twice the concrete poured into the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Let that detail sit for a moment. Oman literally used more concrete than the tallest building on Earth to build the stage for an airline meant to challenge the city that tower stands in, and nothing captured the ambition better than a single purchase in 2016. Oman Air paid a reported $75 million for 1 pair of takeoff and landing slots at London Heathrow, the highest price ever recorded for a Heathrow slot pair at the time. $75 million, not for an aircraft, not for a route, but for permission to land 1 additional daily flight, timed so passengers could leave Muscat around 1 in the morning and step into London at 5:30, ready for a full business day. The deal even came bundled with 2 Dreamliners wet leased from Kenya Airways, the slot's previous owner. This was an airline announcing to the world that it belonged at the top table. But here is where the story stops being about ambition and starts being about arithmetic, because the superconnector model that Oman Air was copying has a hidden engine, and that engine only runs at scale. Think about what a hub airline actually sells. Most of its passengers are not flying to the hub, they are flying through it. A traveler going from Manchester to Bangkok does not care whether she changes planes in Dubai, Doha, or Muscat. The airport is just a corridor with better shopping, and when the product is interchangeable, only 2 things decide who wins: price and convenience. Convenience means frequencies and destinations, which means more aircraft. price means lower cost per seat, which means bigger aircraft, fuller aircraft, and the purchasing power that comes with ordering jets by the hundred. Scale wins on both dials simultaneously. The network becomes a flywheel. More destinations attract more connecting passengers, which fill more flights, which justify more destinations. Now look at the map. Muscat sits about 340 kilometers from Dubai. That is closer than New York is to Boston. Oman Air was not competing with Emirates in some abstract global marketplace. It was standing in the same physical catchment, bidding for the same connecting passenger against an airline operating hundreds of wide-bodies, including the largest fleet of A380s ever assembled from one of the busiest international airports on the planet. Every single transfer passenger Oman Air won. It won by undercutting a competitor with vastly lower unit costs and a government whose entire economic model revolved around keeping that airport full. Here is the inversion that most coverage of the Gulf misses. Oman Air's long-haul routes were not losing money because they were bad routes. They were losing money because they were good routes. Good enough that Emirates flew them too, with more frequencies, bigger jets, and cheaper seats. The better the market, the more firepower Dubai pointed at it. Oman Air's network map was, in effect, a list of battlefields chosen by its enemy. Picture it at household scale. Imagine your family opens a small grocery store, and you are genuinely good at it. Beautiful shop, friendly staff, quality produce. Except the store you have opened sits directly across the street from the largest warehouse superstore on earth, and you have decided to compete on bulk rice and toilet paper, the exact products the giant sells below your cost, just to keep its aisles full. Your customers love you. They tell everyone how lovely your store is. Then they cross the street because the same basket is 30% cheaper over there. That was Oman Air's business model for 15 years, executed with 5-star cabin crew and a straight face. The numbers tell you exactly how that went. Here is the brutal arithmetic. In 2014 alone, Oman Air lost nearly 96 million Omani riyals, roughly $250 million. The government pumped in 130 million riyals of support that year, then tried to wean the airline off, cutting the subsidy to 54 million, then 34 million, while executives promised an operating profit that kept sliding over the horizon. It never arrived. Across the following decade, the airline lost an average of around 150 million riyals a year, which is close to $400 million, year after year after year. Debt piled up continuously from 2009 onward, not a single year of decline. The fleet hit 50 aircraft. The awards kept coming, the losses never stopped, and when the pandemic arrived in 2020, Oman, a country without Dubai's financial depth or Qatar's gas wealth, was suddenly staring at collapsing oil revenues, a sovereign debt problem, and a national airline burning hundreds of millions of dollars a year to lose a fight everyone could see it was losing. For 3 years, the airline drifted in that wounded state, trimming here, deferring there. Then something changed that had nothing to do with aviation, and this is where the story shifts to a different battlefield entirely. Because in 2023, the question on the table in Muscat was no longer an airline question. It was a national one. A new administration under Sultan Haitham was pushing hard to repair Oman's public finances, and every state-owned entity was being forced to justify its existence in cash, not prestige. And when the government looked at Oman Air, it confronted a truth that no Gulf state had ever been willing to say in public. The superconnector dream was not sleeping. It was dead. It had been dead for years. The only question left was whether the airline would die with it. So Oman did the unthinkable. It stopped. A restructuring program launched in 2023, and in early 2024 came the move that stunned the industry. All 10 A330s withdrawn within weeks, slashing the widebody fleet from 19 aircraft to 9. The 4 routes those jets anchored cut entirely. A 44 aircraft airline deliberately choosing to become smaller, in a region where fleet announcements are practically a form of state theatre. The chairman's language gave the game away. The company, he said, was right-sizing and repositioning. In the Gulf, where airlines had only ever announced bigger, that word, right-sizing, was close to heresy, and the cost landed on real people. In 2025, Oman Air cut around 1,100 jobs, roughly a quarter of a workforce of some 4,300, setting aside about $39 million just to cover the redundancies. Cabin crew who had spent careers serving one of the most awarded business classes in the sky. Ground staff in a country where the national carrier was one of the proudest employers. Passengers felt it too. Cities like Colombo and Lahore lost their flatbed widebody service entirely, and several remaining routes were downgraded to single-aisle Boeing 737s with recliner seats where beds used to be. The airline even sold 2 of its Dreamliners. Shrinking is not a euphemism. It is severance letters and grounded jets and routes your diaspora communities relied on, gone. But the strategy underneath the pain was the most interesting part, because Oman Air was not just cutting, it was switching games. The airline walked away from the low-yield transfer passenger, the Manchester to Bangkok traveler who chooses whichever hub is cheapest, and rebuilt itself around people who actually want to be in Oman. Point-to-point demand. Tourists heading for the fjords of Musandam and the dunes of the Empty Quarter, business traffic tied to the Omani economy, premium travelers who will pay for a direct flight. This was the one market Emirates could not take, for the simplest reason imaginable. A passenger whose destination is Muscat cannot be stolen by a better connection in Dubai. Emirates' scale advantage, the flywheel that had crushed Oman Air for 15 years, was worthless against a passenger who never wanted a connection in the first place. Every previous strategy had attacked Emirates where it was strongest. The new one simply stepped off the battlefield. And then, for the first time in a generation, the numbers turned. In 2025, Oman Air posted its first operational profit in 15 years, a positive result before interest, tax and depreciation of around $8 million. Small, almost embarrassingly small next to the billions Emirates earns. But look underneath it. Bank loans fell by 27 million riyals, the first time the airline's debt had declined since 2009. Net losses narrowed from 72 million riyals to about 52 million. Analysts tracking the turnaround noted that government-guaranteed debt had been cut by roughly 92 million riyals, and that the shift toward point-to-point traffic was delivering higher yields precisely because the airline had stopped chasing the mega-hubs. In June of 2025, direct passenger traffic was reportedly up 167% year-over-year. One analyst put it carefully, "The trajectory is unmistakable, but this is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end." The present day carries its own layer of irony, and it is thick. That $1.8 billion terminal, built with twice the concrete of the Burj Khalifa to host a superconnector, now serves a deliberately mid-sized airline, its expansion phases waiting on demand that may take decades. The record-breaking $75 million Heathrow slot, bought so executives could land at dawn, reportedly no longer anchors Oman Air's London schedule the way it once did. By the mid-2020s, the airline's Heathrow timings had shifted well away from that famous early morning arrival. The airline that once ordered widebodies to look like Emirates is now studying narrow-body jets with lie-flat beds for long-haul flying, squeezing premium revenue out of small aircraft, the exact philosophical opposite of the A380. And in 2026, when conflict-driven airspace closures scrambled the entire region's flight paths and snarled the mega-hubs, Oman Air quietly restored its short direct hop to Abu Dhabi, a humble 737 route suspended back in 2020. A small, sensible flight for people who actually want to go where the plane is going. That single route relaunch says more about the new Oman Air than any press release could. Step back and the whole arc resolves into one clean shape. A nation looked at its neighbor's miracle and concluded that geography was destiny. It spent 2 decades and billions of dollars discovering that geography cuts both ways. The same crossroads that made Dubai unbeatable made Muscat, 340 kilometers away, unwinnable because you cannot out-Emirates from inside Emirates' own shadow. Every wide-body Oman Air bought made it more like its competitor, and being more like your competitor is fatal when your competitor is bigger, richer, and cheaper. The route cuts that looked like surrender were actually the first strategic decision in the airline's modern history that Emirates had no answer to. The full transformation is not scheduled to finish until 2027, and the airline is still losing money on the bottom line. so nothing here is guaranteed. But for the first time since 2009, the debt is moving in the right direction. The Gulf spent 30 years teaching the world that in aviation, bigger is stronger. Oman Air's survival depends on the opposite lesson being true. In the shadow of a giant, the winning move was never to become one. Smaller was the weapon. So here is the question worth arguing about in the comments. Should Etihad, the other Gulf carrier that burned billions chasing Emirates, have done exactly what Oman Air did years ago? Click here to check out another video.